There will be blood. How the Iran war came home for the November midterms. Flint West reporting. Pinpoint brief, August 21st, 2026. Section 1. Here's the problem. The United States does not have to run out of diesel to experience the price consequences of a global diesel shortage. And right now, the numbers are telling us exactly where the pressure is. As of August 17th, U.S. pump diesel was equivalent to approximately $232 per barrel. That's about $5.53 a gallon. WTI crude, about $86 a barrel. But sitting between those two numbers is the number that matters. The diesel crack spread, $102 a barrel. Think about that. The refining spread is now worth more than the crude oil itself. And that tells you something very important. The problem has moved. Governments can open crude inventories. They can release oil from strategic reserves. Producers can pump more. Cargoes can be redirected. And all of that can put pressure on the crude price. Fine. But crude oil is not diesel. Crude is the raw material. You still have to move it. You still have to refine it. You still have to distribute it. And you still have to get the finished product to wherever the demand actually is. And that's where the stress is now sitting. The global refining system was already tight before the Iran war. Years of refinery closures, underinvestment, maintenance requirements, and limited spare capacity had already weakened the system's ability to absorb a serious disruption. The Iran war didn't create every weakness. It exposed them, and then it made them worse. Russian refineries have been damaged by repeated Ukrainian attacks. Middle Eastern refining and product exports have been disrupted by the Iran conflict and restrictions around the Strait of Hormuz. Chinese refinery throughput remains substantially below previous levels. And then there's America. America has actually increased refinery output. U.S. refineries are now running at roughly 97% utilization. Sounds good. Until you realize what that actually means. There isn't another gear. You cannot run a refinery at 120%. These are enormous industrial machines. They need maintenance. They need catalyst replacement. They need safety margins. They need scheduled shutdowns. At 97%, America is already pushing the system extremely hard. And here's where things get interesting. Because American diesel isn't just American diesel, it's global diesel. If somebody overseas is desperate enough to pay more for the next barrel coming out of a Gulf Coast refinery, that barrel is suddenly worth more. And if an American wholesaler wants to keep it in America, they have to compete. That's how a diesel shortage somewhere else becomes a diesel price increase here. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 2. America doesn't need empty tanks. America doesn't need rationing. America doesn't even need a physical diesel shortage. It simply needs the rest of the world to be willing to pay more for the marginal American barrel. And suddenly, foreign scarcity has come home. Now look at the numbers again. Roughly $86 for the crude, roughly $102 for the crack. Another $44 for downstream costs and taxes. And there you are, about $232 a barrel at the pump. Now leave crude exactly where it is, $86. Don't move it $1. Push the crack to $120. You're approaching $250 a barrel, about $5.95 a gallon. Push the crack to $140. You're approaching $270 a barrel, about $6.43 a gallon. And crude hasn't moved. That's the point. You can stabilize crude and still lose control of diesel. And diesel doesn't stay at the pump. Diesel moves trucks, diesel moves food, diesel moves construction equipment, diesel moves farms, diesel moves freight. Diesel moves the physical economy. So when diesel goes up, the price doesn't simply appear on a sign outside a gas station. It starts moving through the supply chain. Fuel surcharge, freight cost, distribution cost, shelf price, and eventually, purchasing power. Section 3, which brings us to November, because look at the chronology. January 3rd, the United States attacks Venezuela and captures Nicolás Maduro. February 20th, the Supreme Court rules that IEEPA did not authorize Trump's sweeping tariff regime. 8 days later, February 28th, the United States and Israel begin the military campaign against Iran. Then comes the tariff refund process. By early August, approximately $100 billion has been returned. Now, none of that means one event caused the next. That's not the argument. The argument is that voters don't experience government as a collection of separate policy folders sitting on somebody's desk in Washington. They experience the result. And the result they may be looking at by November is another hit to the cost of living. The Iran war didn't single-handedly create this refining crisis, but it hit a system that was already tight, and it became the catalyst that pushed that system into an extreme pricing regime. Economically, that distinction matters. Politically, maybe not so much, because the average voter doesn't know what a crack spread is. They don't know refinery utilization. They don't know distillate inventories. They don't know how many tankers moved through the Strait of Hormuz yesterday. And frankly, they don't need to. They know what $5 diesel looks like. They know what expensive groceries look like. They know what happens when everything that arrives on a truck costs more to move. And they know when their paycheck doesn't stretch as far as it used to. Does that guarantee Republicans get slaughtered in November? No. Politics doesn't work like that. There are too many variables, but it creates one hell of a problem. Because the administration can tell voters that crude prices have stabilized, and voters can point at the pump. The administration can tell voters America has plenty of diesel, and voters can point at the price. The administration can explain that the disruption is happening thousands of miles away, and voters can ask a very simple question: then why am I paying for it? That's the blowback. A war fought thousands of miles away has found a transmission mechanism straight into the American household, through the refinery, through the truck, through the grocery store, through the pump, and finally, through purchasing power. America may have prevented the crude shortage from becoming catastrophic. But here's the problem. You can't release refinery capacity from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and if this refining crisis survives into November, the most consequential shortage may not be measured in barrels at all. It may be measured in political patience. Flint West signing off.